Hey Chuck, how are you? Hi Nikki.
Hey, Misty, how are ya?
Good. Good, good, good. I'm working on my volume sitch over here, but I feel like we're okay. You sound good.
Good.
All right. Well, that's a good start.
You got great
No.
background.
Oh, yeah, I moved to the corner. I put myself in timeout today. My behavior has been questionable. I have Yeah, I just feel like it's best that I pause and reflect. And so I'm in the corner. Hey, Dave. Um, yeah, so super ready for this conversation tonight because I feel like such an interesting topic because we all view love and belonging so differently. And yet it is something that, despite some of our opinions, nobody's sitting here, of course, we know that we all really need to tap into and connect with. So, everybody, welcome to Thought Flow Thursday night. I couldn't tell you the date, I think it's the 9th. And we are flowing tonight. Nikki Taylor Stewart and I are flowing. Today, we're talking about love and belonging, that third tier on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and how it relates to just so many things that we do in this life, and how without it, it inhibits us from being whole. We can't get that solid, connected feeling of love and trust and belonging that we need to move forward and tap into our whole being. So, super excited about this tonight. Really glad you're here and joining us or catching us on the replay. All is well. So, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the need to connect in order to be whole. Nikki, what are you thinking?
You just
I just tossed it right to you.
tossed it.
Bam.
So because I guess I feel like everyone's about love, 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 love. I always think about that little vignette on the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and the teacher is asking the boy about love, and I think it's hilarious because to piggyback on what Misty is saying, we all view it so differently. So I was like, what does the dictionary say love is? So I went to several dictionaries. A profoundly tender, passionate affection for another person, a feeling of strong or constant affection for a person, and then a deep romantic or sexual attachment to someone. Um, and then in terms of tangibles, because I always say I love what I do and I do what I love. An intense feeling of affection and a great interest and pleasure. Hey, Micah! A great interest and pleasure in something. And so I was like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally have a great interest and pleasure in what I do. And I had an awesome teaching day today too, which is great. Um,
Nice.
what do hey Jessica, what do what steps do we take on this perilous journey to get to love? And to go back to Maslow's hierarchy, can you really and truly find love, be loved, be in love, love, if your basic needs aren't being met? And do we look to find love? Do we look for that level of acceptance? Because let's face it, if you're loving me, you are dealing with all my idiosyncrasies. I have quirks and quips and might be a little OCD, so you are diving deep. But I guess I feel like I am in a good position to love everyone
Okay, Mika.
because um, I have a home. My children are safe and secure. We have food. And those basic things aren't being And this moment in time, we're fortunate and comfortable, and those things aren't being threatened. And so I can examine or assess my relationship with my guy on a regular basis, which you should do because, you know, things get stale and stagnant. But I can do so from a more secure position. And
Yeah.
I think that has a lot of value. And even in just Misty and I doing this month long segment, I was like, oh, like I looked at the chart, the hierarchy, and I was like, this is such a good way to determine if you're even in a position to give love in the way that you're supposed to, or receive
Or
love.
receive it. Right. Exactly. And I think that that's a huge piece, right? Because, we're talking about love in the now, and we're talking about our kids and our family now, but so much of our ability to take love, process it, give love goes way back to how we perceived love, internalized love, did not receive or did receive love way back. I mean, probably in utero, but let's just say even in childhood. Some of the big hiccups that people have moving forward can be directly pointed into something that happened, something that they received or didn't receive or experienced in their childhood. And those things may to a lot of people sound silly. Those people that are always out there saying pick yourself up by your bootstraps, those things that are imprinted upon us when we are kids, they're so powerful. I can remember the first time I got into really super, super big trouble as a kid, like it happened yesterday. Like the first time I got into trouble and I couldn't talk my way out of it because I got in trouble and my mom was there, and you just don't talk yourself out of trouble with that short woman. But, you know, viscerally, I feel that in my soul. And
Yeah.
thank goodness it was not a major thing that shattered my spirit, because if it was something that did that, I know I would have difficulty loving now because I wouldn't have processed that trauma properly to get past it.
Right. And to your point, if you flip that, um, when you have, okay, so you said pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Okay, so we go back to those first two levels. What if you didn't have any boots? And that's a thing, and what if you just lack those basic, or your parent, right? Maybe your parent was so busy just fulfilling those basic needs that your idea of love is shaped very differently than one of your peers who grew up with a little more of the basic needs being taken care of, or maybe even a lot more of the basic needs being taken care of. And there swings both ways, because I definitely know people who have a view of love that is shaped on their not having the basic needs on a regular basis. But I know people who don't trust love because they had too much of the basic needs. And so all of that is about stuff. We like that, just that generic term, stuff. But in ourselves, what do we do? What do we say? How do we communicate to ourselves to make sure that our basic needs are being met so that we can walk into love and see it, see what it is, see what it's supposed to be? And there's no generic way that people are supposed to experience love. Um, but that you can accept it, you can receive it, but you can also give it in the way that it is
Yeah.
meant for progression forward or for enlightenment versus um, enabling. Because some people I know confuse enabling with love, or
Sure.
I mean, obviously, we know that there is a lot of abuse going on, especially with the stay in place. And at one time, or another that may have been presented as love. And
Right.
so looking at where are we in ourselves to be able to accept, receive, but also give good this thing called love. And
Right.
not
What was that? You cut out.
and not just to another person. Not just to not just I don't love is for me is not just about people. It's about the space that I occupy. It's about what I do. It's more than just the people that I'm encountered with.
For sure. For sure. And I want to touch on this point that Jessica just popped up. Expressing and or receiving love is exceptionally difficult as a childhood trauma survivor. And, I think that so many people think that love should be automatic. It's just like I meet somebody, I see somebody, I find this passion, whatever it is, and I just know, oh yeah, see, I'm the opposite end. I'm like, no. Um, but the point of that story is that if you've experienced trauma, especially when you're talking about from people that you are supposed to love or that are supposed to love you, that creates a gate or a block that, just kind of gets higher and higher the longer it's not addressed, because you find other ways to work around it. You find ways to either pretend that feeling isn't there or steer yourself away from that feeling because it hurts or it's dangerous. It becomes a trial to even consider bringing love into your life. And I think, in knowing people who are very, very dear to me and knowing how they've navigated their trauma, I mean, this leads people down very, very dark roads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's worse is the perception of those people looking at somebody who's been through something like that, and once again the bootstrapping idea, or the I've tried to show them love and they're not taking it, so I'm just kind of out of here, because we're refusing to step into their you can't step into their shoes, but you can at least make an attempt to see where they're coming from and how they're existing, and
Right.
just meeting them halfway makes such a big difference in terms of trust, in terms of love, and like I said, as part of this topic for today, that belonging piece. And you can't ever really feel like you belong, I think, if you don't know how to open up that piece of you to love.
And a big part of that is going to come from you being whole.
Sure.
And I guess I feel like I'm compelled to say being whole doesn't equal you're perfect. It doesn't equal you don't have issues. It doesn't mean that you're living in a field of beautiful flowers overlooking a mountaintop and there are rays of sunshine that just always shine down on you. It doesn't mean that. What it does
No.
mean, do you know yourself enough to know um, and to be comfortable in your crazy? I'm comfortable in my crazy. But it took me a while to get comfortable in my crazy.
Oh, for sure, me too, believe it or not. I mean, I've not always been comfortable in my own skin.
Well, and I think for me, here's my personal story. I grew up with a sister who was mentally ill, and there was a way that my mother loved her, and there was a way that my mother loved me. And certainly when I was in elementary and middle school, I didn't know she was out. I didn't pay attention to her. She was my sister. But and I never felt unloved by my mother. It was just that she knew that she had to love my sister a little bit differently.
Mhm.
And it ended up turning into this really big enabling relationship. And I stood on the sidelines going, what in the cuckoo for Cocoa Puff stuff is going on right here? But she loved in the way that she felt my sister needed. And it didn't matter because mental illness is mental illness. Um, But at the same time, I marvel at her skill because I never felt slighted. I never felt unwanted. And as I grew older, I was like, wow, my mom had like mad, crazy, like mommy skills because she understood that and she could do that. And I was like, I want some mad, crazy mommy skills. But um, it's a thing. And I raised my niece. Some people know. I raised my niece because my sister had a baby, then of course couldn't take care of her because she was a bubble off. And I raised my niece, and my niece is very guarded, and I've had her since she was 6. And I never used to think she was guarded because she trusted me. So I'm like, oh yeah, I talk to her all the time, and she's 25 years old now. And people are like, she doesn't talk to us, she doesn't share, and I'm like, really? And then I'm like, oh, you have to be in her inner circle. And you have to essentially prove to her, her best friend from middle school, when they got into high school, her best friend would call me or text me and say, I'm going to come and pick Kai up so we can hang out. Like she made Kai be her friend. And I love her. I love this girl to death because she was like, no, I really like this person. Like, she's my tribe. And she was like, and you don't get to just, she made her buy in.
Right.
And that was like an awesome thing for me because it happened at such a young age. They were in middle school when
Mm.
they first. And so I look at the way my daughter, I call her my daughter because she spent all my money. I look my daughter. I look at the way that, and she's 13 years older than my son my firstborn that I actually gave birth to. So there's this huge span of time between my kids, and no, you have to be in her inner circle, and she struggles with that. She's becoming more and more aware, and see that's the trick. You have to be in her inner circle, but there are no rules for being how to get into the inner circle.
Well, that's the best kind of club to have to get into, right?
You what went for this person. This person might be like, yeah, she did this, and this. Okay, she's in the inner circle. Someone else does it, and she's like, no, no, those aren't the rules for you. So, but it's interesting because I'm the complete opposite. I I don't know how not to love. And I know that that sounds strange. Yes, I'm a Libra. I give people the benefit of the doubt, and the benefit of the doubt, and the benefit of the doubt. And then when I'm done, I'm done. But I don't know how to filter my love. I don't know how to give you like this much, but then you over here this much. I don't know how to do that. If I love you, I love you.
That's that's like some magical fairy shit. I so yeah, exactly. It's like pixie dust. Like I admire anybody who can be that way. And, my friend Jessica here, one thing I have always loved about her, I mean, she's been through some stuff, and yet she's always like, I would definitely put her in the category of one of the most loving, most optimistic, kindest people I know. Now, don't push it too far because she will cut you. But I mean, if you get to the cutting point, you deserved it. She loves with everything. I had two very guarded parents who looked at the world very skeptically. And I think when I was young, I used to be like, love because everybody should love me. And then as I got older and started living a little bit of life and, just kept getting dinged and dinged, I became very, very suspicious. And to this minute, I'm suspicious, but I feel like it's also strategic. I feel like I love enough. But I also think that, it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can trust freely,
Yeah.
even if it's with one eye open. So,
She's like, No, you don't need that much.
Yeah, yeah, I give you 10% of my love today. What do you do with that 10%? Yeah, it's kind of that way. And you know, once again, looking at life experience and how you get in that situation, when you are I spent a lot of my growing up feeling like I was the other, right? I was not around a lot of people that looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
I was not around a lot of family. My family was my mom, my dad, my sister, Jessica across the street, who I just adored. Very, very small group of people. So, it's hard to be loving and trusting when, you have experiences that say perhaps you shouldn't be this way. So, you know, um, I think it's an interesting piece when you add the belonging part to loving, because you can't ever feel like you are truly open and safe enough to love, stepping back down a rung and coming back up to love, if you don't really feel like you belong. And I think that's where trust is built.
Or, well, I guess for me, um, I love Brene Brown. I do. And if anyone listens to her, she's hilarious. She says exactly, she has this story in my head, and I'm like, oh, I thought I was the only one that like made up scenarios upon before I walked into a scenario and would have like a whole story in my head, which had nothing to do with what was actually going on. But it's a lot about vulnerability and
Oof, I hate that. Jesus.
I
Now you're making me sweat.
you know, vulnerability gets a bad rap. It is seen as a bad thing to be vulnerable. It is not a bad thing to be vulnerable. And like I want my life partner. I want my guy. I want him. I don't want anybody else unless of course Jason Momoa knocked out the but
I mean, that's a different story. When it's Jason Momoa, we definitely make allowances.
but I want that. I want him for the rest of our lives. This is my relationship.
Wait, Jason Momoa?
No.
Oh, I was
Okay.
gonna say, how'd you work that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I do want Jason Momoa, but no. And the really cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs thing is I had to this year I had to put my big girl pants on because I was like, well, he's getting on my nerves because guys do that, and he was getting on my nerves, and he was just like, well, I'm never leaving you, and I'm like, but I have a car, I can drive myself away, and then I just started thinking, I was like, I put a lot of time and effort and energy into this, and I don't, I don't want this to end. And it required me, like, making that statement of, I don't want this to end, I want this to go forward. Then it required me to be more vulnerable. It required me to open up. It required me to take down a little bit of the shell that I had built up. Um, and not because I love him and not because I wasn't in love with him. It just required me to really put my money where my mouth was. And that's a part of what we're talking about too is love is not that beautiful flowered hillside with waves of sun. It is like that sometimes. It absolutely is like that sometimes. But sometimes it's like you said you were gonna freaking make dinner, so I need you to do that. And not at 9 o'clock at night. And it's all of that stuff. It's all the cracks in the concrete that we know we're gonna eventually come across. And it's digging your heels in and saying that this moment in time isn't the end all be all to this relationship. And I guess I felt that way about my business too. You know, I'm not gonna be in a brick and mortar. And at first I was like, oh, I'm not gonna be in a brick and mortar. And now I'm like, can we just be done with this brick and mortar so that I can get to this? But a part of it was I was loving my space, and I did love my space. But my space and the energy in my space was about what I brought to it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's still with me. And when I really embraced that, then I really started to dive deep in what I was doing. And I really started approaching my teaching from a more passionate, and I was already passionate, but this is about a true understanding in myself that I love what I do and I do what I love because I'm so passionate. Hey,
Hi, Jason.
um, and that was inside of me, and that's what I wanted to bring out into the world.
Well, yeah, and I think when we talk about it from a professional standpoint and the love and affection, I've said before, your business is like the toddler that you can't get rid of, that is never going to grow up. Just when you think you're getting that little bastard out of diapers, right back into diapers because it's time to pivot, it's time to grow it, it's time to change it. And I think that people fall out of love with their business because they lose sight of one, what got them there in the first place, that passion, that heart, that I'm doing this because I want to, blah. And it becomes, I'm working this business because I'm supposed to. And when you lose that love, it's just like losing love for a partner or, a friend or a partner or spouse. The shift that happens, you made it. Yes. Hi, Uni. The shift that happens is sometimes it's a true shift. Sometimes it's, my heart has changed. And other times it is, I didn't allow my mindset to mature. And therefore, I've lost sight. I've lost my sense of belonging within my own space, my own business, my own profession. And, especially right now where so many people are having to gut check and see what
Right.
their passion really is. And not just capital P passion, like, oh my gosh, I'm so into this, is the best thing ever. But small p passion, am I willing to trudge through the dirt to keep this going?
Right.
I think it's important to look at that as just as importantly as we look at our intrapersonal or interpersonal relationships as well.
Well, then that brings us, for me, that brings us right back to what is the goal? What are your self goals? And understanding what those are. Are you achieving those? So, Misty, we spoke about the journey to get to love. You know, what is that journey? And certainly, we can be knocked off of our socks. We can see something and just like, oh my gosh, I love that. Or you meet a guy and like days after meeting, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with him. Yes, I am that person. But um, it's
Not me. Oh,
I
no.
so that person. I am so,
No, Nikki. Oh, come on.
I
You're
am
so pragmatic. How does this happen?
because I'm also human.
Well, I'm human in like a cyborg type of way. Come on now.
No, I knew that I loved Carrie Grayson. That's my guy.
Scotty.
I knew that I loved him within like a week's time. And it has ebbed and flowed and changed and shifted. But I can go back to that moment when I was like, holy crap, our souls have met someplace else in another time. Yes, I'm that person too. Yes.
Oh, I'm totally down with that part. That makes much more sense to me.
Okay. So I'm like, we have encountered each other in another life because there were just things about us that were so easy, so comfortable. It was a level of comfort. Like when you see old people and one of them trudges out onto the porch and sits in their rocker, and then the other one comes out and puts the drink down and the other drink, and then they sit there, and it was that comfortable early on, first week, and I was like, wow, this is weird. But guess what? It was that way when I started teaching gyrotonic and Pilates.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me too.
Like I'm a super physical person, and when I learned gyrotonic, I knew that I wasn't going to dance forever. I had a pretty significant injury, and there was just stuff that I couldn't do. Um, Even though I actually danced for 10 years after that. Um,
You're a special kind of character here.
I have a partial tear in my left Achilles that was never, it rolled like a window shade. So there's a thin thread of it left, but part of it rolled like a window shade, and I never had it fixed because I live in the US and I didn't have insurance. I digress. And so but I danced for 10 years after that, and that was weird. But when I learned gyrotonic, I was like, this is so awesome. And if you've ever done gyro, and I love gyro, it just, it's like a mind meld. And it felt really, really good. And it was really, my mother was also sick. And at the time, I did not know she was dying, but she was dying. And it was such a visceral release for me that, yeah. And then when I discovered Pilates, because I did my gyrotonic and gyrokinesis training first, if that's how you love me, wait, in all the seriousness, what, Micah, Lynne Campbell, I love you to the moon or back. Yay! Yes, and Mike and I have known each other since I was 19 and I'm not 20. Um, and
Lovely.
she is, like, Micah is she's going to be honest, whether I want to hear it or not. She's going to be like, yeah, I know that's what you think you want to do, but, and it's a
Those
friend.
are the best people, though, I think. That's the best type of, now that is love. That that is the type of friend love that spans lifetimes. Like when you know that you're so connected to somebody that you can just be yourself
Yep.
and you can share that and know that they're going to see right through your bullshit at any point and they're going to call you on it. And then you might want to throw them out of the moving car, but you know that you're not going to do that because they did exactly what you would want them to do, which is be straight and honest.
And you need
And
them to post bail for you after you're arrested for pushing them out of the moving car.
well, that's it. Someone's got to start the GoFundMe. Jesus Christ, who's dinging me? Pardon me. I'm sorry. I thought I muted this. Keep
We had
going.
a conversation a couple months ago, and she started the conversation off with, can I just tell you, I'm so glad that I can tell this story to someone. I can tell it to you, and you already know the backstory. And it was way backstory. And it was cool. And it's like she didn't have to explain the this and the that and the this. She's like, and starting right here. So yes, um, that is how I love. I love unabashedly. I love unconditionally. I throw myself in the mosh pit and hope I don't get trampled. So far, I'm still here.
See, I think I respect people who can do that. I really do. I think that if you can make that work, then you are perhaps a little bit higher up on the evolutionary ladder than I am. My I let people in, but it's kind of like when you are at the amusement park and they will only allow a certain number of people on the ride at one time. And so, like I feel like at that point there should be like contests. Like you have to just prove that you really want to get on that ride. With my idea of love and relationships, I find it is very, very tough for me to let those walls down. But when I do, I mean, forget about it. Like you're in. And it's funny because it's not everybody. Like there are people that I meet and I meet them once And that you actually, when I met you, I was like, okay, I don't know this girl, but there's just something about her that makes me want to stay connected with her. And usually I'm like, don't talk to me, God damn it. And that wasn't, not at all did that even cross my mind. I was like, I like her. I don't know why, but I do. And I'm going to figure it out. And I usually figure it out. It's usually some energetic thing. And then there are people that I meet that are really nice, and I feel like maybe they want to be my friend. And there's almost like my gate is like, don't do. And Martin too. Oh, yes. So I met Martin at a photo shoot for a catalog, for Bounce Body catalog. And I've got to tell you, instantly, I like that guy.
He is likable. He
He's
is.
special. Martin, you are a special character. So, and the other thing for me is, and I'm going to say this, I don't want to get too far off on the tangent, but to be honest, I know very few, not a whole lot of Black people. I know a lot of people of color. I've grown up with people of color, but I don't know very many Black people. So when I meet Black people that I instantly feel a connection to, and it is not all Black people, but when I feel like that connection is there, I'm like, I'm gonna go with this because it's just lovely. Um, and that probably, I can actually tell you where a lot of that goes or doesn't go back to my childhood, but just some issues that I had with people growing up, girls growing up, that really scarred me to my core for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And being bullied is a really big fuck, sorry. Being bullied is a really, really big deal, and it really does affect you negatively. And as much as I'd like to say that I'm evolved beyond it, I'm no better than anybody else. It's been a
Well,
thing.
I have a similar background growing up in terms of I grew up in a predominantly white community, um, and really didn't get. I wasn't really associating with Black people in the same way that I was associating with whites, literally because of where we lived in Indiana. And I moved back to Chicago by my choice and went to performing arts high school. And I was like, oh, okay. And some people thought I was weird, but the reality of it is if you go to performing arts high school,
You're
we're all
weird.
right. So
Yay!
is all the weirdos and freaks in the regular high schools, they all go to performing arts high school. I don't care if it's the most normal person, you're like, oh, they're really normal. And then they do something, you're like, okay, never mind. They're right where they're supposed to be. No, and so I went to performing arts high school, and there was such a mosh pit of different races and ethnicities and nationalities. Like, there's all confused. I don't know what they mean, but just a bunch of different colored people. And the irony of that is, I went to high school with 140 people.
Wow.
That's it. All 4.5 conservatories. Musical theater was sort of its own conservatory. Um, but what we had and what we shared, the good, the bad, the ugly, the rather intoxicated, um, we all had a passion for our. We all loved that we were the weirdos and freaks. And not because we were trying to be weird or freakish, but that was our view of life. And we had a camaraderie with a group of people that viewed life the way that we did.
You had a place where you belonged,
Yeah,
where you could be free to be who you were and discover and grow in your own way at your own time.
and it's huge. It's huge.
That is huge. I went to my first college on my college tour was a Point Park College, and it's so funny that Kim Rulo just jumped on. She was one of my college besties, and let me tell you, we were full on the land of misfit toys, our little group, and it was the best.
Yeah.
It was the best because no one had to put on airs, no one had to be fake. Everyone just got to be who they were because it was a performing arts school, performing arts, journalism, and then the Art Institute was attached. So we had
Okay.
that group of weirdos as well. And the thing about it was like the expectation was that you were going to be weird. And sometimes people didn't wear pants, and we had a great toga party like several times, and like we could just be.
How that started?
What?
You not wearing pants?
Well, I just when the toga was on. I mean, it was difficult and interesting, but I won, so that's okay. The best toga contest. But the point of the matter is, how many people don't get to find that sense of belonging?
Right.
And it's really funny. I'm just going to toss this out there. As performing artists, as you and I were, it's such a cutthroat, aggressively charged environment to be in. And yet, probably the best place to really find out, if you're strong enough, I think,
Yes.
the best place to find out who you are and where you're going.
Yep, I agree. And that is interesting because as we did have we had a great camaraderie.
Hi,
And,
Brett.
it's really funny because I went to when I was at the academy. We were in Old St. Pat's Church, and if you're Chicagoan, Old St. Pat's Church is it's a historic landmark, and it's in front of the expressway, just in front of where the Madonna supposedly cried. I'm not I'm just simply saying it's where Madonna was supposedly cried. And that's where our high school was. It was in the rectory behind the building that used to be a rectory behind, and so, or actually the school. And so we were the Academy Originals because that is where the original school was. And then they've since moved to actually another church a little bit further north. And we don't let those people in because they weren't in the original building. So our Facebook group for the Academy Originals is only through like 91. And the other people who are in the new building, they were, and it's still a part of that. And when I go on the feed, you still feel and experience the love that everyone that we went to school with, that they have for each other. Um, and I think that is definitely a piece. Being able to dance, which is what I really, 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 really wanted to do. Being able to dance and being able to go to a school with dance and being able to go to a school with other kids where that was equally their passion. Um, that gave me a sense of belonging and gave me a little bit of oomph in my own sense of self-worth, self-esteem, and what I could do, and what I wanted to strive for. And again, going back into the world, of course, you graduate high school, you do all those things, you bartend, you wait tables, and um, you see people, or at least I've encountered people who I'm just like, wow, like, um, they don't look like they're having a good day. And with, am I gonna fall in love with that person? No, but I can walk by them and be like, hey, how you doing? Have a good day. And I am that person. Um, because we don't know where people are, and especially in this time, we don't know where people are. We don't know where their mindset is. We don't know what is going on, what's happened before, or what's happened afterwards. And I think that it is easy for me to love, and it is easy for me to give love. And if that's one of my superpowers, then I'm all for it, you know? And that has been part of my journey to grow the passion that I have, um, because I can't imagine myself doing anything else. And I love it. I had a great class today, and it was really, really awesome. And part of what it was for me was everyone in the class has now been working with me for a while, and I saw every single person in class just light bulb went off. It was a total epiphany class for, all 4 or 5 of them. I always lose count because I can't remember if I'm the fourth person or the fifth person. all had like these incredible epiphany moments, and I was like, I love this. And then Carrie said, why do you think you can get people to respond to you that way? And I was like, because they don't want to be in pain. And he just looked at me and he's like, you make people want to be better. And I was like, so that is how I live.
And you know what? There's something to be said. Okay, so this is going to be like a yay, what we do moment. But, there's something to be said, and I say this all the time. There's something to be said for the quality of your own life.
Yes.
When you get to say that every day you get to make somebody feel better.
Yeah.
Every day somebody says, oh, I got out of pain today because of you, or I came in feeling all jacked up and I'm leaving feeling amazing. And, when it comes down to that idea of love and belonging, back to Maslow, it's pretty darn amazing to affect somebody else's life like that.
Right.
And I know that for me, being able to do that for somebody else makes me feel a little bit better about where I belong in this world and how I feel as a person navigating this world and this space. And there's a lot of shit that happens that I think is terrible. But in my own little bubble of goodness, Wonder Woman had the Fortress of Solitude, I think, but this is my bubble of goodness where I share the gift of movement and I get back that love that is just, in terms of a thank you. And that's really all I need. Even though sometimes I have a not great teaching day and because I'm not connecting with other people. Of course, that's just real life. But at the end of the day, to be able to say my contribution to this world is helping other people feel better. I mean, holy bananas. You can't ask for more than that. You just can't.
No. And I have a friend client and I love her to death. And she came to me and asked me, she's full on in recovery from coronavirus.
Hmm.
She came to me and asked me if I would work with her. We talked and I'm like, well, I'm sure your intercostals are stuck together and she's a teacher of movement and the text message that she wrote me was it was so endearing and she just said, you're the one I want to help me on this journey. And I was like, okay.
Do you ever get that? Why is she picking me? What, like,
really?
how'd you find me? Yeah.
You know,
It's just such an amazing thing.
it is. And because, whatever skepticism I had about myself, because I do, I mean, that's, I'm human too. But I like to fail forward. Um, yeah. But but it was so, I was so humbled and honored because it was just like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome that like someone trusts me, and it was about my skill set for sure, but it was also about how she knew that I would take care of her.
Right.
And I'm not gonna push her to go more than what she can go, but I'm not gonna undercut her either. And it's really going to be a journey for both of us.
Sure.
And like, wow. And it was so cool because of course we know that that's where people are gonna go. They're gonna have to have movement treatments that allow them their breath capacity back and allow them to stick their ribs, and if your ribs are stuck, then your sacrum is all glued to your lower back, and it doesn't have the little bit of movement that it's all of these things, right? We know that this is going to be a thing, but it was, and I absolutely adore the fact that I touch people's lives in that way, and so in dissecting my own ability to love, I do that, and I keep giving That was an issue for me. I did need to establish some boundaries because I used to give and give and give until I was depleting myself, and that was not good.
And
Um,
now you work 25 hours a week. Talk about boundaries.
but I have 4 boys.
You work a lot.
See, I teach 25 hours a week. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you win.
But no, I mean, I think, and then I'm going to pull into what Misty said. You know, the journey and the skill of learning to love, being whole involves the ability and the facility for love. And, you know, and I get it. I get Misty. You know, you know, you leave the chain on the door. Remember
Oh,
how you have chains on them? You just open.
do you understand that when Glenn walks out of the house, I lock the door? And like sometimes he's just going out to get something out of the car. He can't get back in. I am that girl. When I go to a hotel, I booby trap every single hotel room that I stay in.
I do that.
Listen, I booby trap my house. There are knives hidden all over my house because you just never know. I am just a little bit, I am not the trusting girl that I was when I was like 2.5. So, but listen, we live in a weird, wild world.
We do. But part of what I really thrive on is intuition, which I never used to listen to. I think if you're a body worker, if you're a movement therapist, specialist, whatever we want to call ourselves, right? Um, I think we do so because we're intuitive and are in tune with our empathy. We tend to be a little bit more empathic. And, you know, I remember when I first started teaching and I would just get flooded with people's stuff. And I was like, why do I have this? Why is this on me? That is not mine. How do I make this go away?
Why am
And
I so tired?
exactly, you know, and I only taught one client, you know, like, why is this person exhausting me? And I had to learn that. That was a process. That was absolutely a process. And it's definitely something that
There is.
apprentices and mentees is, you know, being really really mindful of your internal tribe and your and their energy and the fire that has to stay lit. Your fire has to stay lit. You know, you can't let your fire die. um and I learned how to do that because I was giving so much in my sessions and then giving so much in my home, but I had to process that out. And to be perfectly honest, I was not just depleting myself, but I was depleting aspects of my home life, and we're going back to those first two foundations. And so, in a lot of ways, my relationship suffered. My previous
Right.
relationship, um, there were some other issues, but I found myself not understanding why the basic concept of me giving love wasn't enough to salvage my relationship.
Mm,
And that was a big one for me.
interesting. Yeah.
And it didn't mean that I wasn't going to continue to give love in the way that I do, because it felt disingenuous to me to try to stifle that. Oh, I'm going to love you, and I can't do that. Like that's why I know that I can't do it, because literally I had the experience and I tried to stifle it, and you know I thought I was going to go crazy. And so what it was about was, you know, just being very conscious
And
of,
present, being present.
yes, that's actually probably a better way to say it. Just being in that moment, and making sure that certain things needed to be fed. And one of the things that I know right now that allows me to stay present for my family, who to thunk, is bike riding.
You in this bike riding business, I'm telling you, this is your crack.
I love it. Like 40, 50 miles a week. And I'm not a cyclist, people out there. I'm not a cyclist. I
But
am
you are going to be one in about another week.
a bike rider. I do not clip in. I am terrified to clip in because I'm like, I'm going to fall over and I can't release my shoes. So I am a bike rider. But it's very cathartic, and I can just kind of get back into myself. And I love the way my body feels. I love the way my body looks. Um, and that, not like in a like, oh, I look so good. I like how strong I feel. I like the muscle tone that I have, and it makes me feel good. And it's not something that just, I sprinkled some fairy dust on myself and it happened. It's something that I've worked for. Over these past couple of months, there was something that I wanted to do to achieve for myself. And I took the time to do that. And that's for me going back to that self love and taking that time, taking that energy, and not allowing myself to be swayed by other things that they only have the level of importance that I place on them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you don't give those things power in your world, then they're not going to have the power to affect you in a positive way.
And I think it's really easy. One of the things that I've discovered, I'm on a new project and I'm getting emailed like all the time, and I'm like, yeah, but it's really okay if I don't respond like within 5 minutes. Sometimes I do, and I'm like, 24 hours is not a bad time to respond. And
Agreed.
we forget this. We are so into this thing of, oh, someone sent me a message, I have to respond right now. Oh, someone sent me a message. I don't respond to stuff right now because it's Mercury retrograde, and you write stuff and you put it out there in the universe. It's just out there forever. And or you say something crazy and you send it to the wrong person. You're like, oops, JK.
I didn't really mean you. My bad. Oops.
Like
Yeah.
5 times, but it was really supposed to go to somebody else. But no. So, but the level of importance when I finish teaching, I fill up my water bottle, put my shorts on, jump on my bike. Sometimes my little nugget comes with me, and sometimes he doesn't. I don't care. I'm going to do 8 miles with him, or if I'm going to do 10 to 12 miles by myself, or if I do theory and we do 15 or 16 miles, I'm getting on my bike.
So
And
good.
yeah,
It's so good. And that whole being care
yeah,
is critically important. Too many of us don't take the time to do that. You can't even assess where you are in the love and belonging department if
mm-hmm.
you don't know where you are in the generalized you, who you are, your core being, what the hell is happening in my heart and soul department. You
Right.
just can't do it. And moving forward, all of these other parts of your life start to erode gradually, or sometimes meteorically, just depending upon what's happening,
Yep.
if you don't have that check-in mechanism with your whole being. And for you, it's your bike. It's like a meditation for you, I'm assuming. Um, you know, Everyone's got to find what that is for them, or else, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. I remember for years where I would say, this is not going to surprise you one bit, but I'd be like, oh yeah, man, my work is my meditation. When I sit down in front of the computer and I start researching whatever it is, whoo, there's nothing that soothes my soul like a journal article. Yeah, bullshit. I will tell you flat out. I mean, granted, I did enjoy it, whatever, but it was just a mechanism to keep from focusing on something else that was nipping at my craw, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now,
And
and that said, learning is something that I love. Like, even when you're talking about, like you were talking about Jason Momoa and a man that you love, or whatever, the man that you love, for me, like a guy that's super smart, or a girl or a chicken, whatever, that's super smart, that like I could talk to, and like we could talk about like really, really interesting stuff, like limbic system distress, and how when the limbic system is taxed, how it affects every everything else in your body. Like I could geek out on that forever. I'd be like, oh baby, ooh la la. I mean, like that's my jam. But even like some Megan Duffy pops in when I'm talking about the limbic system, of course. But I mean, the point of the matter is that even geeks need to find a way to just piece out on that, and just find ways to tap in even deeper than that. I think if you can't, how do you belong? How do you figure out where you are in this world, in this life?
Right. And then,
Nikki?
yes.
Oh, did you have another point? Because it's almost that time, It's time to break the machine. It's time to break the machine.
What are we breaking?
There's so many things to break today.
Hey, is somebody gonna? Are we doing audience participation? Somebody want to
Well,
tap
I've
in?
been waiting for the audience to throw some participation up here, but the audience is pretty quiet today. It's a sleepy time audience. So, how about audience? Give us some break the machine. Give us a break the machine moment or thought or concept that we're just going to thought bomb on you real quick. Hey, hey, hey. Give us a something, guys.
Anybody want to break the machine?
If not, we're going to have to leave it to Miss Love Olympics over here to come up with a break the machine moment. What? All right, Nikki, what do you have?
Oh gosh, there's just so many. I don't know. Like I feel like I'm teetering towards the Betsy DeVos education thing.
Oh, that woman, Betsy DeVos, makes me want to trade in my ovaries.
For what?
I mean, I don't know, like Hot Wheels? I don't know. She is so
I don't know
awful.
what that means either, Micah.
I just feel like she makes me want to denounce my womanhood because she is such a troll cow. Not you, Micah, Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos and her educational initiative, since she's taken office or taken her appointment, have done absolutely nothing but degrade the education system, which was already a steaming pile of shit. And now, I can't. Now all of this saber rattling about how we need to get the kids back to school and all of this when this woman doesn't even believe in school. Ugh. Sorry,
Well,
Micah.
she doesn't believe in public education for sure. And,
Correct.
it's my question at the beginning, at the end of May, when e-learning ended, my question was, how do you promote social distancing in a system, a structured system that is literally designed for socializing?
100. It's impossible, but they don't care. It's all about restarting the economy.
So she spoke about not sending funding if schools didn't start. And then I was listening to NPR because I have to dip in ever so often. Listen to NPR, and they're like, well, actually, the president cannot withhold funding because the money has already been allotted. This is me just paraphrasing. The money has already been allotted, and you would have to go into Congress and say, hey, we wanted to fund this and we're going to hold this, because you're not talking about one school system.
Right.
Not like you're like, oh, those Illinoisans, they're losing their minds, we're not going to fund them. And you couldn't do it by the state either. However, like the school system that we're in, which I thought was really interesting, because there was a big question of a strike when we were moving to Wheaton. And CPS, Chicago Public Schools, were about to strike. And I actually think they did go on strike. And so I was like, well, how does this affect? Like, what kind of funding do you guys get from the government? Because, Illinois didn't have a budget for like 2 years. And by the stupidity and having no way to change it. Oh, gosh, with schools, it's changing because people are going online, and if you build it, they will come, and people are creating online programs that are, well, yes, vote, but people are creating online programs that rival what people are learning in public schools, simply because you have a little bit more freedom to go in and play with the curriculum, and you can choose, and I've looked at some stuff and it's actually kind of cool. But the reality of it is that, um, for instance, in our community, in our little town of Wheaton, property taxes go directly to the schools.
Hmm.
Whatever those boundaries are, we have like 6 elementary schools that feed into 2 middle schools that feed into 1 high school. And so wherever your elementary school boundary is, those property taxes go to those schools. Period.
Right.
And it's like that in a lot of the suburbs. And so I happened to ask the principal of my kid's elementary school, and he's like, "Oh, we receive 9% of federal funding."
9.
9%. That's all. Their budget is 9% federal funding. So it's like
But you're also in Wheaton, Illinois. I
exactly.
mean, and
No,
I'm in a similar situation, in Pennsylvania, it's kind of the same thing. Your money, your tax dollars go to your district.
yeah, and
So that's great. But if you are in like a terrible school district, then your
absolutely.
kid gets the shaft.
And that's a thing, right? That's a thing because our school district has already purchased enough Chromebooks. They had them purchased in like the beginning of June. They've already purchased enough Chromebooks to be prepared for whether we do all e-learning or if we do a hybrid of some in school and some out. But they've already purchased enough Chromebooks for every student in the district to have access to a Chromebook that would be theirs for the year that they would, take home and use, and maybe get plugged in with all of the software. But the idea that you would threaten an entire country's school system because people don't want to be sick. And I'm sure you guys have seen that thing that's floating around Facebook where it describes what a teacher would have to do to maintain social distancing, not only to protect the children in the class, but also to protect herself. How that all goes out the window when everybody sits down to eat lunch, or the kids get on the bus and this group of kids, their parents don't even believe in coronavirus, and so they got on the bus without any mask. They just made a super spreader on the bus, and then everybody gets off the bus, and then they're forced to wear the mask. And then this parent over here is, that my kids' constitutional rights and the mask, and and it's like all of the other problems still existed. Kids who don't have money for food, kids who can't do whatever they need to do, kids who can't even register for school because there's a fee to register for school. All of those other problems are still there, and now you're adding this whole big clump. In addition, across the board, e-learning was not successful. E-learning was not successful. Sure, some kids excelled at it. That's fine. That works. But across the board, e-learning was not successful. So you now have kids who are actually further behind.
Well, e-learning was not successful because, I mean, let's look at this realistically. The best, most wealthy nation in the world wasn't prepared. I mean, I'm not even talking pandemic. I'm talking about a tsunami could come through or something like that, and people may not be able to get through on the roads, but they may still have internet. And why is nobody prepared for worst case scenario? Why weren't schools, why wasn't anybody ready if
Right.
something like this happened in the first place? That's the bigger question. I
Yeah.
mean, granted, what's happened now is truly a disaster in terms of where our kids are leaving off from the end of last year.
Right.
But moving forward, we should have really, when we were looking at the numbers in the beginning of June or even at the end of May, I think we should have been prepared for what this would have looked like moving forward. Schools are still not sure what they're going to do. A lot of it because of parental pressure, um, workplace pressure, all of these factors that are going into it. How do you fix it? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you the answer is not defunding the schools because Betsy DuVos doesn't like them.
It's sort of one of those things. It's like she's viewing funding the schools as being She's looking at the structure. She's looking at the brick and mortar building. That is where kids go to get an education. And I agree. I mean, socially, we're probably not the norm. We have four kids, and they pair off littles and biggles. The two youngest are the same age. The two oldest are the same age, and they're boys, and they all get along. And there's a common, stream of consciousness through them. But my sons have friends who are only children, one
My
child.
son's an only child.
Yeah, and so the social aspect, I think, is definitely an issue and definitely missing. But if she aligns the money with the actual structure of the school, that's a bigger issue for me because the school is about the education that's being implemented. It is not about the brick and mortar school. And it's also, funding for food because we still have people who are what we call it, um, I guess, free or reduced lunch. There's another name for it. I'm just brain
Right.
farting. Um, these are all real things. And so even understanding that the way that she's talking about defunding the schools, it just doesn't work that way. But you would have to know that. So what she's saying can be, it's pulling a grenade because you have a lot of people who don't understand how the government actually funds the schools and why it can't just be rescinded in the way that she's acting like, she could just change your order at a restaurant. But there are a lot of things that are attached to that. But if your goal is to educate kids, then rather than throwing them in a building where there's the potential for chaos to happen, why not look at what is the best possible way? And the schools are there. I mean, I would love it if my kids could go and have gym class 2 or 3 times a week. And there's a way to do that in the big open field that is behind my kid's school. Things like that I think have value. They don't need to sit in a classroom where they could potentially be exposed,
Right.
but they could have gym. They could have more organized play and more organized structure in terms of that. I don't know how sports would play into that. I don't know if that's possible. Um, but I think that there are other ways to be constructive. But this is just a destructive government. I mean, our government right now is just destructive across all planes. And while she's emphatic that kids need to go back to brick and mortar, honestly, we still have shortages for PPE.
Oh, and it's getting worse from what I saw today.
I mean, it's it's just an ignorant statement to make. You're not prepared for the second wave, which is not really the second wave because we didn't drop our numbers enough for it to be considered a separate wave from the first wave. So we're actually still in the first wave. Yeah, yeah. None of the
At,
states ever got below. This is Nikki reading the news. This is not Nikki with any sort of, I'm just telling you what I read. None of the states ever got below the numbers that would say that, okay, everyone's flat. We have a new low level of numbers by which to create a frame of reference. We never got beneath all 50 states, didn't get to those numbers. That is why when you look at, I think it's Germany that's having an increase, and I think some of the Asian countries are having an increase. They're calling it a second wave because they got their numbers down so low. Some of them reporting 5, 10 cases, where we're still in, hundreds and then thousands if you look across the state. So they're not saying that the U.S. is in a second wave. They're saying that we're still in the first wave because
well, yeah, absolutely.
so
And what happens next? Who knows? All I know is my son's school is going to be doing a hybrid model, 2 days in, 3 days out. And his point of view, now granted, he was in cyber school for the past 2 years, and he's just happy to be getting out of the house. So
yeah.
he's like, I will take it as far as I can go. And that's great. But at some point there's got to be some adults in the room that are going to start making things happen.
Well,
I'm not willing to just sacrifice my child until somebody figures stuff out. You know what I mean? It's I can't count on this government to keep an eye on our children or to even give a damn that they are children and make sure that they're well. It's my job as a parent since they won't.
And are the 2 days
So
in staggered start?
I'm sorry.
Are the 2 days in staggered start?
Yes. Yes. So we don't have a whole lot of information on that yet, but they said, it'll either be like a Tuesday, Thursday or a Monday, Wednesday. And then the other two grades, the 10th and 12th grade, will go those other 2 days. And I guess the last day will be a teacher day only, or it'll be like a cleaning, sanitizing, whatever.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, it's a thing. I mean, my kids are still young enough where I need to be there. They're not
right.
babies. They're not babies, so we would like for the house to be left standing, in the way that we.
Important. Important. Yes. Yes. All right. Well, on that note, it's time for us to flow on out of here. It's quarter after or something like that. I don't even know. But guys, thank you for those of you who've been with us through the duration. Thank you for coming and listening.
Guys.
We've got more to flow on next week. Still thinking about all of these levels of being and needs and emotions and how does it all tie together to keep us whole. So next week, next Thursday, 7 p.m. for those on the East Coast, 6 p.m. for the people that just really forgot that they should live on the East Coast. Yep, so 6 p.m. for you crazy kids. Looking forward to seeing you guys here then. Everyone Cecile, good to see you. We're leaving now, but listen to the replay and hopefully we'll catch you next week. I hope you're having a great day, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great day. What was that?
Love you guys to the movie.
Indeed, guys. Love you. Have a great weekend. We will see you next week for ThoughtFLOW once again. Ciao, ciao.
Bye, guys.